Hi, everyone, and welcome to Kandji's WWDC 2025 reaction video. I'm Arek Dreyer, Principal Solutions Engineer at Kandji. WWDC is always a key moment for Apple admins, and this year's announcements are no exception. From updates to Platform SSO and Declarative Device Management to new features in Apple Business Manager, we're here to unpack what really matters for organizations managing Apple devices at scale. I'm excited to be joined by some of our top product and engineering minds to break down what Apple just announced and what it means for IT and device management. Joining me today are Mike Boylan, Principal Product Manager at Kandji, John Richards, also known as JR, our General Manager of Device Management, and Adam Henry, Senior Product Manager at Kandji. We've got a lot to cover. Let's dive into what our initial thoughts are on what's new, what's exciting, and what IT teams need to know. So, from the keynote, let's take a look at the keynote first. Is there anything that stood out from the keynote that just blew you away?
It's the first time in 10 plus years since we've seen a new design. That's pretty cool. Just see liquid glass and see how that's going to propagate down to all the different types of applications on all the different Apple OSs. That's definitely the first one that comes to mind.
And I would say, and certainly the version number scheme changes, moving away from disparate version numbers across the different platforms and standardizing on kind of the 26 nomenclature. So iOS 26, macOS 26, et cetera. I think that makes a lot of sense and will be exciting to have that parity going forward.
And for me, I think it's not directly related to being a Mac admin, but the Apple TV section was pretty enjoyable and excited to see what comes with the new episodes and shows that are coming out on Apple TV.
I'm with Adam. The version numbering seems like such a little thing, but it's going to be so much easier when we're talking to people about the versions of iOS, iPadOS from 2025, 2026, that transition. It's difficult for me even, and I wrote the books on like older versions of macOS, to remember what version went with which code name and like keeping the versions of iOS and macOS all together. So I think that's going to simplify things, especially for people that are new to the platform.
Yeah, and I'm curious, are they going to do the same thing for the hardware? Right now, iPhone, they have a similar kind of version scheme that doesn't quite align with iOS number. Are they going to have an iPhone 26? We'll see.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be interesting to see as people start testing the betas, like it should be fine, but there's always these little small unknowns when there's version number changes, like maybe assumptions that folks have made in scripts or other tools where you're assuming that the next version is just going to be the very next number, but now we're jumping ahead by 11. So that's something that I think we'll see as we get through the beta testing season.
Mike, I'm glad you mentioned betas because I want to encourage everyone that's listening to use right now, this moment, to test the betas. This is the most important time to test the betas, even though you might be thinking things aren't where they should be and like there's a lot of bugs. Apple wants us to be testing right now. Like this is the moment where we have the most chance to have our voices heard and to make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. The earlier you can get your feedback in, the more likely it is to get acted upon. Many years ago, I did a session about filing feedback with Apple at a couple conferences. I was at Apple for a long time. I can tell you that is absolutely true. Do not think or assume that, oh, someone else will find this issue, or I'll test in beta 4 when things are a little bit more solid. Start testing now and file those things, as early as possible, and file often. When you find an issue, do not assume someone else is going to file it, because it could absolutely be your piece of feedback that ends up being the one that gets it fixed before release. Very important.
Yeah. Before we move on to the what's new for IT PDF, is there anything else from the keynote that stood out that you just have to get out before we move to the next topic?
We're all Apple fans here, and we all use Apple devices in personal life. And I think they really listen to a lot of feedback of just little things that people have been wanting for a long time. And personally, I am really excited for polls in messages, being in a lot of group chats and trying to coordinate on options or times to get together, things like that. And then asking people to thumbs up or heart a message to get alignment. Really excited for that feature. I think it's going to be big time savings for everybody in group chats.
Definitely.
Yep.
I love the feature of not getting a call if it's just a spammer until and not even seeing what this call is about until the person proactively says, here's what this call is about. Then you can pick up and deal with it, or just go on with your day not knowing that even happened.
The spam call and spam messages features are another personal favorite of mine too.
The last text message that I got was spam. It was someone that said, can I take you out to dinner? And like a part of me was like, oh, that's good. Who is that? Is that someone that's like in town? No, I just hit block and report spam. That's
I get tempted to respond every now and then just to see what happens.
Well, that changes the way that you send message. Like when you think about how to send a message to someone that you haven't been in contact for a while, like now you've got to include, hey, this is Arek Dreyer from high school. I'm going to be in town? Not no context, no name, no nothing. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So the PDF is just chock full of goodness this year. And does anyone want to take a crack at what stood out from the PDF this year?
Sure. I think lots of stuff stood out to me. One of the new kind of feature enhancements that I think I'm most excited about is really seeing Apple round out this return to service functionality. So those that aren't familiar, return to service is a new feature that's associated with the Apple device wipe command that allows you to fully automate the reprovisioning of a device after the device wipe completes. And so this year in particular, they announced new enhancements to the whole app management piece when a device is in this return to service process, where that through some new device management capabilities, you can actually preserve the applications on the device after it factory resets. So I think that's going to be a huge benefit for customers who do need those kind of constantly reprovisioning devices, those workflows, because that will save you a ton of time. Since the apps will already be there, you don't have to wait for them to all download once the device has finished its setup process. So I think that's a really slick enhancement from Apple's end.
Yeah, the return to service is magical, that it erases the device, but yet keeps a Wi-Fi profile on so it can connect to the internet, re-enroll, and then also that magic now of having the apps available from a snapshot is just amazing. And when I was watching the video about, hey, we want to extend it to a new platform, was I the only one who thought, is this now coming to Mac OS? But the new platform, of course, is Apple Vision Pro.
But it is interesting, return to service, the enhancements they made there are also related to another big enhancement they made, which is just around migrations. And RTS has been used for migrating from one MDM vendor to another. And at Kandji, we have the migration agent, which has been really successful in helping customers seamlessly migrate their devices to us, their Mac devices, I should say. But Apple bringing in like a first-party support with the level of control they have over the OS, as well as tying it into Apple Business Manager, is incredible. And as much as we don't want to lose customers to other MDM vendors, I think it's great to just bring this in Apple's hands, and it also keeps MDM vendors on their toes because maybe it's no longer a sticky solution, and it really makes sure to keep us accountable and our competitors accountable that we are keeping up pace with Apple. We're staying with innovations because it's not as sticky of a solution. And if you're not keeping pace, then it's a lot easier to move your devices over. So I think it's great for everybody. And maybe we'll figure out how to augment the macOS migration agent that we have to support this for maybe non-automated device enrollment provisioning flows. But really cool update to see that gives admins a lot more options.
Yeah, and I think along that same line, there's a lot of individual features, and I'm sure we'll talk about them. But like the main theme for me looking at this document and all of the things that were announced this year is some years are really heavy on new payloads, new keys, right? The sort of raw management set. This year, I think there was a lot that was released and a ton of value delivered, but a lot of it is like on the ABM side and thematically like Apple taking back a little bit more control over some of these things, like migration being initiated from ABM. So I think that's really interesting to see. And to JR's point, like it's great when they build the OS, like there are things that they'll be able to do and interact with users in ways that we could never do, even though the Kandji migration agent is awesome. We'll continue to use it for the non-ADE flows, but we'll definitely lean into whatever they provide to make the ADE migration flow as seamless as possible.
Yeah, you can see in them add APIs for Apple Business Manager. That's been something people have been wanting for a really long time. And then the fact they're bringing in AppleCare warranty information, it's just tons of quality of life improvements coming this year, which is awesome to see that Apple's definitely been listening to the feedback.
I'm certainly keeping my eye on that new Get Device Information API with Apple Business Manager and Apple School Manager. Haven't had a chance to look at the documentation yet, but I'm really hoping it includes that AppleCare warranty information.
I want to come back to the migration because I just want to make it clear that you have to be at version 26 in order for that migration to be kicked off from Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager. So our migration agent that we have for Mac OS is still going to be useful for customers that don't yet have their Mac up to 26.
Yep.
And again, to be able to kick that off from Apple Business Manager instead of having to have something in self-service that makes an API call to release that, it's just amazing. And JR, you said it benefits everyone. Makes me think of our dearly departed Charles Edge, who said, "A rising tide lifts all boats." And I think this is just an amazing addition from Apple that benefits, like you said, anyone who uses the Apple ecosystem. And for Adam, you mentioned the Get Device API. So do we think that is going to be useful for device management solutions and for customers that just want to use the API to get that information into somewhere else?
Yeah, I think it can be used for both. I do say all of this a little speculatively. At the time of this recording, Apple has not yet published the deep dive of the developer documentation yet. But yeah, what I'm hoping for is that we'll be able to get a lot of the information that Apple has within Apple Business Manager out of it via these new APIs. And it sounds like the way Apple's positioning it is that it could be used by customers just to hook up other solutions to Apple Business Manager in case they need to pull those device attributes or even AppleCare warranty information into other kind of third-party solutions. Yeah, I think Apple's done a good job of really making it extensible, not just to MDM, but to other solutions as well.
One of the pending questions I have that we'll see over the next couple of weeks is, if we as an MDM vendor want to get some of that data, do we need to use these new APIs, or will some of these fields and some of this data be exposed to the existing API endpoints for like your ADE token, right? So would we have to make additional calls to get this data, or will the existing MDM APIs be extended? I think we'll see that over the coming weeks or learn more about it.
Or will a customer have to go create a token and then import it into the device management solution? Yeah, great questions. Can't wait to see what that means.
There's some other really great enhancements on the ABM side of things too. If you're doing federated authentication and you're locking the domain, there's not ever been a way until now to know who exactly has Apple IDs created with my domain. And there's been a long-standing request so that organizations can reach out to those users and help them with the transition. Apple's now going to be providing a list to the organization of the people that have those accounts. So I think that's extremely valuable. MAC address information for iOS devices, granular RBAC controls for the device manager role, so that not everyone that has that role can go in and do everything with every device. JR mentioned this, but these are like very long-standing feature requests that there's been a ton of them addressed this year. And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier too, with the overall value is really high, even if some of these things live outside of individual keys and payloads that we would set up. These are big changes.
Yeah. And I was really excited earlier when you could use Apple Business Manager to turn off activation lock for a device. Like that addition was huge. One of the things that I was super excited to see, and I was surprised because I had a pipe dream that you could use your IDP credentials one time and one time only during Setup Assistant, and that would authenticate you to enroll, that would set up the local account, and it would register with your with Platform SSO for your IDP. And I thought, there's no way that Apple's going to do that. And it sounds like that's what's going to happen.
Dream come true.
Yep. It sounds like it's almost essentially like a triple sign-on, right? Like you're in Setup Assistant, you're able to register for Platform SSO, sign into your managed Apple account, and get into your Mac all in kind of one flow, which is awesome. Yeah. And to have that be a part of the Setup Assistant, that's always been one of the biggest kind of, to date, friction points with Platform SSO is there's things that you need to do once you already set up the device and get into the desktop, right? Bringing this into Setup Assistant means by the time you get to your desktop, you're in a position where you're set up and ready to go. So I think that'll be awesome. Yeah. Obviously haven't been able to test it in practice yet, but excited to do.
Yeah. Just to be clear, today, the way that Platform SSO is, if people want to take advantage of that just-in-time user creation, like there's all these things that have to be in place. The local account has to be created, that you have to be at the login window, File Vault can't be on, and like all these different things. And so when people are like, oh, then that zero touch out of the box isn't quite what I think it is or what I'm looking for quite yet. So
yeah, I think the idea behind Platform SSO has been great from inception, but in every release to date, there's been a thing or two that's made it difficult for people to, maybe not difficult, but challenging to adopt for all the workflows that they want. And from what I saw, at least thus far this year, feels like maybe it's the year where a lot of those friction points are removed.
yeah.
So I'll be watching community feedback, right, as people test.
Yeah. And it's great that Apple's embracing the importance of identity.
Totally. And passwordless as well, right? Like secure enclave back keys, tamper, phishing resistant, great stuff.
Yeah. You're still going to need a password.
Yeah.
You still need a password, but
Passwordless.
yeah, hopefully it's just to unpack like passwordless. We're reaching towards passwordless. And one way to get closer to passwordless is to not have users enter that password so many times. And phishing resistance, like if the device can use a secure enclave backed thing to provide authentication rather than asking the user to provide a password, then it can't be phished. So that future is coming, but this year feels like it's just so much closer.
And one of the things also tied into these updates is like authenticated guest mode. And the thing that I wasn't expecting was the tap to log in, which is related. So I know JR and Adam have a lot of experience working in various industry verticals with different types of customers. When I saw this, I immediately thought, before watching the session, just reading the document, I was thinking like, oh, this is perfect for healthcare. Like doctor comes in, taps their ID badge, gets into the device. To have a workflow that's built and supported first party by Apple and the IDPs for this in healthcare, I would love to go to my doctor's office and see them tap to log into a Mac, right? And this just seems really slick.
Yeah. And it made me think of those corner cases, as we call them, lab computers that right now are bound to Active Directory to enable mobile accounts to log in, but you can't have File Vault turned on, and you got to deal with deleting those accounts so that they're not stale because File Vault's not turned on. And like that whole mess, just that seems like to no longer be a problem.
I think one thing that they mentioned about authenticated guest mode is the data is always wiped when you log out. And that's for a lot of computer labs, that's the desired behavior, but not always. So I'm curious to see if anyone files feedback. Let me set some sort of expiry timeout, keep the data around for 5 days or something like that.
Yeah, if it's like a video editing lab and you want people to come in and not have to copy their 50 gig project for something.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, super exciting stuff in identity.
So there was also we mentioned apps. Does anyone want to say anything about app management that was announced this year?
It's cool to see everything really coming into declarative device management across all the OSs. Announced some of that stuff last year and previous years for iOS and iPadOS, but now all types of apps can be deployed on macOS via the Managed App Framework. And it's also including a new mechanism for what we refer to as app config as well. And that allows for arbitrary key value pairs. It's going to be interesting to see how this evolves over the next few years because app config has been around for over a decade now. And so it's going to require app developers maybe make some changes, but hopefully a lot more powerful and flexible than what we've had for a long time.
Yeah, it looks like deploying apps with declarative device management now not only has feature parity with the existing MDM commands, but adds even additional new features. And one that I thought was really interesting that I'll call out is the ability to pin a specific version of an application. So it looks like Apple is providing more discrete version control over applications that are deployed via declarative device management. So I know a lot of customers are going to be excited about that.
Any bets on how long you can pin before you have to update?
It's a really great question. The devil will be in the details there.
Over under 90 days.
Yeah, 90 days is my guess. 90 days is my guess to align with software update deferrals.
But I think that's another good example, though, where we have logic in our product and other vendors have logic in their products as well to we know from the metadata service that we talk to on the App Store to know if there's a new version available and decide whether you want to push out the new version. This is an example where, because it's in the declarative model, you're telling the device, this is the version that I want, and just keep it there. And that's more logic that we're able to take out of our product. And again, Apple's sort of taking ownership of that in the best only way that they can, which is a nice shift. It's less server-side logic for us, and it's better to have it be handled by the device.
For sure.
And another interesting, Adam called out one of the nice features of this declarative model for app management. I was watching the one session last night, and Bob Whiteman, one of the Apple engineers that did the session, Bob's awesome. He was talking about certificate identities, and that's always been a longstanding problem with managed apps, and like getting the right certificate and using the right certificate for the right purpose. And so being able to, with declarative device management, make sure that managed apps have access to the right managed identities just provides a ton of flexibility for access control and authorization, and it's a really nice improvement.
Yeah. Did anyone notice a de-emphasis of the term mobile device management?
I noticed it, yeah. They definitely were just leaning into device management.
Yeah. And DDM, of course, is the way of the future. And we're seeing that with, hey, this new app pinning, all these new things. That's only if you push out that app using DDM. Like, that's the only way that you can get entry to these things, is to use DDM.
Absolutely. And in that same vein, we also saw that Apple announced some changes to the way the software update process works. They did officially announce that all of the old MDM queries and commands that we used to use to manage software updates are deprecated and will be removed, they said, sometime next year. So you can see that they've really put a lot of effort into fleshing out the software update management process with declarative. So again, not only does it have feature parity with the old solution, but it can do so much more as well. So yeah, it's very clear that the move to declarative device management is here and a conscious choice by Apple.
And it was expanded to tvOS in the spring, and now visionOS as well. So across all of the platforms, and
supported on all platforms.
Definitely the way forward.
Yeah, there's a lot of visionOS, Apple Vision Pro, in this year's updates. What else was there was
Safari management.
Safari management.
Safari management's like very near and dear to my heart, having managed like computer labs and education for a long time. Way back in the day, there were tools to do that. And then over time, those drifted away. And now having great first-party support to manage those settings like bookmarks again is awesome. I am curious to see, I haven't seen the docs yet, to see if you can manage this on the device channel, or if it still requires the user channel, like the Safari features that were announced last year. But I'm hopeful that you'll be able to manage these at the device level, because for things like computer labs and whatever, that makes the most sense. It's like, I want these bookmarks in place for anybody that's using this device, or I want to allow these extensions for anybody that's using this device, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's great, because if you look at Google Chrome, for example, Google's provided tons of flexibility for admins to manage this browser at scale. And I'm sure that there are companies out there that would love to manage Safari in the same way, but historically over the last few years, they just haven't had that capability. So you default back to Chrome. And so Apple's doing a great job really expanding out the capabilities that admins have to manage Safari in a certain way, or maybe it's giving them the opportunity to take a second look at Safari being the browser of choice for their Mac and Apple devices going forward.
Yeah. And with Chrome, let me back up with Safari. Like right now, today, you can use iMazing Profile Editor and create a configuration profile and send that down. It's not the same as using what we're seeing, declarative, for managing Safari. So that's exciting. We haven't really touched on Apple Intelligence. Anything that stood out this year about Apple Intelligence?
I think
it's this.
Go ahead, Adam. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding Apple Intelligence, it seems the supervision requirements are back. For those that are aware, Apple did provide quite a few different restrictions regarding the various Apple Intelligence features. And for the initial launch, they had in their developer documentation that some of these would not require supervision, but they would in a future release. Based on the documentation that Apple's published so far, it looks like nearly all of the Apple Intelligence restrictions do now require supervision, or at least will as of these upcoming 26 releases.
And I think it took a couple releases to get, well, for one, to get all of even the current baseline features of Apple Intelligence out, right? We saw them release more and more features over the spring and now into these releases. So there's a pretty extensive list of at least restrictions for managing Apple Intelligence. So for organizations that are concerned about it in any way, they should review the list and make sure they've set them appropriately. But pretty much every feature that's available in Apple Intelligence, there's an MDM control to restrict or turn it off, which is nice to see.
Yeah. Look, guys, I know we can go on, and there's so much more that we didn't even get to talk to, but we really want to keep this short and sweet. So I'm going to wrap up with the final question and hit you with it first, Adam. What are you most excited to see out in the wild?
What am I most excited to see out in the wild? I think I'll go back to app management with declarative device management. I think it's really exciting that it seems to finally have feature parity with the existing install application command. But these new features that more tightly allow you to control what version the app is on, I think are really going to resonate, especially with a lot of enterprise customers. That's something that historically you haven't really been able to do with App Store apps in the past, is if you're deploying an App Store app, it'll automatically deploy whatever's latest on the App Store. So just in my own personal experience, I know in working with customers, having that version control is going to be really valuable for their enterprise workflows.
Cool. How about you, Mike?
For me, it's definitely the improvements to Platform SSO. A few years ago, I did a WWDC session on enterprise identity and authentication. And so to see the evolution of these tools, right, to go from something like Enterprise Connect, which wasn't even really an official product, to the Kerberos extension, and then Platform SSO, and now like the evolution of Platform SSO to bring it into Setup Assistant and this guest mode thing with tap to login, like I want to see how this ends up getting used and if this is the year for Platform SSO to really take widespread adoption.
How about you, JR? What are you most excited to see out in the wild?
I think the migration piece looks really interesting. Like we saw in one of the videos, even the user experience, how it takes over the screen, really has nice, clean language for end users on what they need to do. Basically just tap a button, everything happens. Really great experience. I think it's going to be awesome to see that on the wild. But also one little side tangent that we didn't even touch on is Spotlight.
Oh, Spotlight!
Spotlight, of
The
course.
Spotlight changes look incredible. How it becomes more context aware of what you're doing in the app. And it's also got things like clipboard history, which I know is probably going to open up some questions of what kind of MDM controls we have over those kind of things. As a power user of macOS, or at least I think I am, I'm already a pretty heavy Spotlight user. I've used Alfred in the past, those kind of tools. So super excited to see Spotlight in the wild and eventually what kind of MDM controls there are around that as well.
I can't wait to see all of them.
Arek, what about you?
For me, I'm with you, Mike. That Platform SSO, it's the same answer as you, but I'm just super excited. That's where I've dug in and spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make the best out-of-box experience for customers. I want to get the device in the customer's hands, ready to use, and all that stuff come back to that vision of zero touch. I want zero touch for IT. I also want zero touch for the end user as well.
Well, as someone who wrote the book on directory services for macOS, I'm not surprised that's your answer.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Thanks for joining us for Kandji's WWDC 2025 reaction. We'll be publishing a full breakdown on the Kandji blog, diving deeper into these updates and what they mean for enterprise, IT, and security teams. Be sure to follow Kandji on LinkedIn for ongoing updates and let us know in the comments what you're most excited about from this year's WWDC. Until next time.